but I've known I've been a traveler all my life. I remember when my mother told me the story the first time they took me to the beach in Ocean City, Maryland on a family vacation. I was 3. And they put me down on the sand. They said I immediately made a beeline for the ocean, laughing and screaming and saying, my mother said, I said, egads and little fishes, this is too much. And my father had to chase me down before I got to the waves because I couldn't swim. But I was going right in, and I just loved to travel, loved to go places, loved to move around. And I've done that, both the moving and the traveling. And it does make you richer, in a sense. It makes you richer in the sense of seeing what else is going on, that there's more going on than in our home neighborhood, let's say. It also gives you exposure to different cultures, to different foods, and things like that. It gets you out of your comfort zone a little bit. And it can be incredibly valuable to see, masterpieces like Notre Dame and other places that we've been fortunate to see. It's not the same as seeing the picture. This is a shot on an area called the Ring of Kerry in southwestern Ireland, and it's a peninsula, and you go around. It's in Kerry County, and you go around, and it's just one vista like this after another. And I think probably, given everybody on the bus, we probably took 12,000 photos between everybody on the bus, holding them up against the bus window, or he'd stop somewhere and let us out and let us take pictures. It was just beautiful. These are mostly old stone walls that are, some of them, thousands of years old. And, and actually this was taken out the bus window because there's a little bit of the stuff around the edge of the window. Dr. Moyer was sitting with her, she had an iPad mini and holding it up to the windshield and just looking at it. Whenever something interesting, she'd take the picture. I think she took the whole trip through the iPad. Bill Bryson, who's a great writer, writes a lot about travel, said, I could spend my life arriving each evening in a new city. Now, there are many people who would say that and say, ew, I remember not long ago, that's Florence, by the way, Dr. Ken Gordon and Dr. Deb Gordon and me, and I guess Dorianne must have taken this picture. I remember not long ago, when I got back from another trip, put it on Facebook, I'm back, and somebody said, don't you ever stay home, in a comment thing. And my response was, and I put it down, I always feel like I'm at home. I don't have to be in my house to feel like I'm at home. When I go somewhere, and it can feel like home, because, again, it's kind of something it's hard to explain. And I know that's not something shared by everyone. Heck, if everybody traveled, the place would be the airlines would be too crowded. So I'm glad that there are people that don't travel very much. This is the Cliffs of Moher, M-O-H-R, right? E-R, thank you. And Diane was our spelling officer on the trip. So this is on the west coast of Ireland. It was a foggy day, as you can see, and these cliffs are about 700 feet, and the waves crash in at the bottom, and you go to you just kind of walk around. They have the pathways and everything, and there's an old castle up there on top, behind us, where the picture was taken. And just this incredible landscape. And we drove, the bus came, and there were parts of the road as we got close where the fog was such we could see about 20 feet in front of the bus, and that was it. And just coming through, and then the fog, we were having lunch in the little reception center there, and the wind picked up and the fog cleared for a few moments, and you could see some distance, and about 10 minutes later it was fogged in again. These are places that I mentioned in the meditation. The Irish have a tremendous sense of place. They feel connected to the land, to the landscape. And this is one of those kind of very meaningful places for many of them. The west coast of Ireland is just so rugged like this. I don't think I have any pictures. I might later, but there's a place called the Burren, B-U-R-R-E-N, right? And it's this great big area along the coast of these rocks that are like smooth like glass. It looks like a liquid was frozen and then it cracked. And you just walk around and there's these big slabs and there'll be a crack and there'll be little flowers or grasses growing through it, and it goes down to the ocean and it goes up the hills. And it's where the poet John O'Donohue was born. And it just lends itself to this incredible experience of place, and it looks like the moon in a lot of places. It's just, and it turns out that Dorian was doing some research this morning, in fact, that Ireland used to be connected to North America 325 million years ago. Was anybody here for that? Joe? But and it was below the equator, and it was a tropical sea that, as the geological stuff happened, it became petrified and came into that form. But when you're out walking across, we stopped the bus and we went out walking, and it was just so strange. You're like jumping from place to place, and some of the cracks are really big, but on top it's smooth as glass. And there was this fellow with us from the Redondo group, and I go back to the bus, and Donnie's standing there, and Donnie was a real character. He was like right out of Central Casting as your Irish tour guide. And he says, "Look at him, he's way out there." And this guy was way out at the edge, way out near the edge of the cliff. And he says, "The guy can barely walk down the street. And look at him, he's jumping across." He was out there like nimbly jumping across all these things. This guy's like, elderly gentleman that would take him forever to get to the bus in the morning and stuff. And he's just out there running around like a little kid at the edge of the burren. And we were yelling at him, but he couldn't hear us because the waves were crashing behind him and everything. He finally came back. But it was really an interesting experience. Carson McCullers says, "We are torn between nostalgia for the familiar and an urge for the foreign and strange. As often as not, we are homesick most for the places we have never known." There is that sense of exploration. Okay, in these pictures, that's the Duomo, the cathedral in Florence. That's a statue in a garden in a place called Eze, E-Z-E. That's in between Monaco and Nice. And it's a little town from medieval times, and it's got about 400 people live in it. And half of the town is down on the coast, and the other half is 600 feet up on top of a little mountain. And at the very top of that mountain is a cactus garden. And they have these goddess statues that have been put there over the years. There's 9 or 10 of them. It's really quite a place. And then that's off the island of Capri, off the coast of Italy, there on the right. But this nostalgia for the familiar, we all, that's that, again, that horizontal sense of soul. And yet an urge for the foreign. Some of us want to explore. We kind of have that desire to explore, but the tug of home is too much. This has been a story for time immemorial. I mean, the movie It's a Wonderful Life. Remember, anybody ever seen that movie? It's usually played around the holidays. And Jimmy Stewart, the Jimmy Stewart character, all his life he's planning to go out and go around the world. He wants to be an engineer and build bridges and so forth and travel the world and see new things. But the duty of home calls at a key moment, and he elects to stay home. Now it's interesting the lens through which you view that. In the traditional lens that was the intention of the movie maker, Frank Capra, and some others at that time, that was the right thing to do. Viewed through a more modern lens, it seemed that Jimmy Stewart was the character was unfairly forced to give up his dream to stay and take care of people that should have been able to take care of themselves. Kind of interesting. And would the world have been better off had he gone out and done what he did, or when he stayed, who knows? It's kind of an interesting way to look at it. But many people have that urge to travel, and they're just not able to do it, or that circumstances prohibit it. Other people don't really want to travel and get dragged around the world by other people, right? That was my dad. He hated to travel when we were young. And, he would complain the whole time we were away on vacation. Didn't like the bed, didn't want to go out, didn't like spending all the money in restaurants, whatever it was, you know. He was that homebody person, and after he and my mom divorced, I don't think he ever traveled anywhere again. Whereas she went all over the world. You know, so it's interesting to see how that plays out. This is another shot on the Ring of Kerry. This is a reflection of the driver in the window. But just these beautiful, beautiful places that you'd go around a corner and you'd see an expanse like that. Or inland, there were about 7 inland valleys we went through, and there were sheep everywhere and cattle. I think we took a picture. We could probably do a census of the cattle population in southern Ireland, because everybody, oh, there's sheep. They take pictures of them. And what they do there, rather than brand the sheep, is they spray them with this vegetable food color. So each owner has a different color and design on the sheep's wool. So it's kind of, some of them are kind of comical, you know, when you're looking at the different colors on the sheep. A good traveler has no fixed plans and is not intent on arriving. Lao Tzu said that. No fixed plans, it is not intent on arriving. Because, you know, it's as much in the journey as it is the destination, which is a good attitude to have in today's airline industry. Because I really have found that I enjoy flying. I even enjoy most of the airport experiences, other than the really long lines, you know. But we were in Heathrow for 6 hours, I think, the other day, on our way back. And it's, you know, it's a pretty chaotic airport. I mean, hundreds of thousands of people go through there every day. And it took us about a 10 to 15 minute bus ride from the terminal where we landed to the terminal where we were going to take off for the next flight. And I wondered if we were in the same airport anymore. I mean, you could get from LAX to Burbank in that period of time, you know, but it was just this huge expanse. And all these giant planes in the international area, all the A380, the big 2-story aircraft, there were a bunch of those, and we flew a 747 for our leg of the journey. And it's just really interesting to see all the different people. I mean, you talk about a melting pot. That Terminal 5 at Heathrow is just people in all kinds of garb from all over the world. And just really interesting. Really an interesting place. Plus they have good restaurants, which is nice. This is an Irish traffic jam. We encountered some of these when we were on the back roads. You can see it was raining a little bit that day. And yeah, that would be kind of common. You'd see and then behind them, a second or two later, the fellow with the stick, you know, that's herding the cattle comes walking across, waves to us, and then, you know, they all move down little lane into the next pasture. Even on freeways, there were signs for cattle crossing where there was a same owner on both sides of the freeway, and occasionally they'd need to move the livestock across the freeway. So that was kind of neat. And we learned about a lot of the different kinds of cows there from our driver. So 90% of the sheep are for slaughter, and only 10% for their wool. They eat a lot of lamb there, you know, and the cattle, I think it was the other way around. 90% were for milk and cheese, for dairy, and only 10% were for consumption. I know all the vegans are cringing. Not a lot of vegans in Ireland. I had a we were out on the Aran Islands, which are these islands off the west coast, and just, you know, you wonder who in the hell ever thought that would be a good place to live. I mean, it is just brutal out there, and it's rocks, but there have been people living there for 4,500 years. And it's very sparsely populated even today. There's like the biggest island has like, 320 people, I think he said. And just rock, you know, and it was all rocks. Any place that now is grass, they had to bring seaweed and sand up from the water and put it on top of the rocks. And they've been doing that for 4,000 years. And so I would think everybody lived by the water, right? You'd say, I want to carry this stuff all the way up. But a lot of the houses are up in the center of the island, up on high areas. And anything that was for grazing, they had to move a combination. It's all they had was seaweed and sand. And there was no water on the island that was drinkable. So it had to be, all the water had to be brought over from the mainland until 100 years or so when they put a pipeline in. You know. You had to really be tenacious to want to stay there. And I've got a picture of it in a minute. And then there's this other place we learned about called Skellig Michael, which was off the cliffs of Moher. And it's off the Ring of Kerry. And it was a place where the monks went hundreds of years ago, and there was nothing there. It's a rock. And they built a stairway to the top, 672 steps that had to be built one by one out of these big pieces of rock. And at the top, they built a monastery. And they would live there. And they were invaded by the Vikings. And you're thinking, A, who would want to live there in the first place? And B, who would want to invade the people that were living there? You know, you just got to wonder. But just this amazing, you can find it online. It's just this amazing place. And then later they built another stairway. I think they have 3 of them altogether. And it was in use until not long ago. Just this incredibly austere, they wanted to create the most austere lifestyle they could. That was the purpose of building that. Anthony Bourdain, who has really good shows on CNN about travel, says travel isn't always pretty. It isn't always comfortable. Sometimes it hurts. It even breaks your heart. But that's okay. The journey changes you. It should change you. It leaves marks on your memory, on your consciousness, on your heart, and on your body. You take something with you. Hopefully, you leave something good behind. Yeah, because it is, you know, it really can be. You see things in certain places, and a lot of places that are very, you know, disheartening and difficult to see. Let's see. This is Mykonos in Greece. That's another shot of a little place in Mykonos, and that's the Blue Mosque in Istanbul. We took those on the cruise a couple years ago. Dom and all were with us. And it really is interesting. The first time I went out of the country was in 1973. Me and a couple friends went to the Bahamas, and we rented motorbikes. And after we figured out driving on the wrong side of the road, after getting almost killed about 50 times, we actually went back out of the tourist areas into other parts of the island around Freeport and found a lot of the neighborhoods, and just incredible poverty. Just incredible poverty. And it was kind of hard to see, yet at the same time, the kids would come out, and here was 3, you know, tourists on minibike or on motorbikes, and they would come up and they had their roller skates. Some of them only had one, and they want to grab hold of the bike and let's pull them along. You know, so we did that for a while, and then we actually had lunch in a little restaurant that was for the local residents. No place there had glass in the windows. And so we had peas and rice for lunch. And it was kind of, you know, it was both difficult at the same time. There was a sense of connection. So that was my first experience being out of the country and actually seeing different elements other than the resort hotels and the kind of things that a lot of tourists, that's all they see. This is the bishop's mansion or bishop's palace it's called, at I'm forgetting the name, Clonmacnoise, which is a very old monastery in Ireland. It's this is really neat the way this place is kind of collapsed inward so it doesn't fall down the hill. And just from hundreds and hundreds of years ago. So you see a lot of these the ruins are everywhere. Now, one of the things they have in a lot of different parts of Western Ireland in particular are what they call famine houses. When they had the tremendous famine back in the 1800s, and a lot of people that died, they didn't tear their houses down. They left them. None of them have roofs anymore. But what happened was, legally, it was kind of interesting, the way the law was at the time, If somebody died and there were no heirs, there was no way to transfer the property. Nobody could buy it because there was no seller, and so forth. So these places remained kind of looking derelict, but they also later took on a very symbolic meaning of remembering those who had died in the famine. So you'll see, dozens of famine houses around. Usually only one or two in a place, but they were all over the areas we toured. So lots of ruins that are, many are preserved and many are still continuing to fall into. Now this is the edge of the cliff on the Aran Islands up in a fort that we walked up to. And the wind was blowing so hard, that's as close as I'd get to the edge. Because literally, people were getting blown around. I mean, it was just such a strong wind. The wind was blowing out to sea, so. We're about 600 feet up. So if you looked over the edge, you'd look down and just see the ocean 600 feet below, and the rocks and everything. Just a beautiful place. If I'd have opened my coat like a sail, I probably would have gone, But just a beautiful. So Anais Nin says, we travel, some of us forever, to seek other states, other lives, other souls. Just to be able to get out and see the world and enjoy different things and to see the richness. Rick Steves, who's you probably see him on PBS, he does his travel shows and he has guidebooks and everything. It's worth checking out. He did the graduation address this past year at Evergreen College where he attended. I think it was Evergreen, where he attended. And on his website, ricksteves.com, you can access the talk he gave. And what he said to the graduates in a nutshell was, you're really fortunate to be graduating from college at a time like this. Actually, it wasn't this past year, it was the year before. There's no jobs for you. So he said, my advice, get out. He said, spend time traveling. Get out of the country. Get out of your comfort zone. Go somewhere and backpack. Go somewhere and stay in a hostel. He says, if when you travel the world, you come back a better American. Because you begin to understand that a lot of what you hear about other parts of the world here aren't really so. That there are wonderful people everywhere, that there are people that you can connect with, that there are wonderful customs and wonderful experiences. And he says your gift is this economy that frees you to not have to go right into a career path. And it's interesting to see it that way. Because so many of us, I know when I was that age, going overseas wasn't on my radar at all. I didn't know anyone that did that. I didn't know, just it was never an idea. I didn't go to, if that's for me, I'm busy. I didn't know anyone who did that. I didn't go to Europe till I was 53, I think. Yet it was there all the time. And they were preserving it, pretty much for us. And it was just, but it's such a great thing. I love to travel. It's just so enriching. So the question becomes, what's your preference? What is it that you seek? What calls you? And it may or may not be travel. It may be to see the United States. It may be to see more of your own neighborhood or your own city or your own state. I mean, you could spend a lifetime traveling in California. But I think the thing to do is identify those parts of ourselves that are so valuable, that are so much, that we just need. I think I need to travel. I think that's why I've designed my life that I can. Some mostly consciously, but some unconsciously. Dorianne loves to travel, so that's one thing we really share. We're already, I'm home again, but for 4 days, and then we're traveling up to the Bay Area on Wednesday for a conference. I won't miss a Sunday until next year. But we've got 6 mini trips between now and the end of the year. And then we're doing a 15-day cruise in January through the Panama Canal with Dr. Ken Gordon and his wife Deb and another couple. Because that, that's just it's such a call. Where haven't I been? Where do I want to return? And people say to me, how do you do that? Well, you do it. You do what's important to you. And you do what you believe you can do. So it takes both. It takes the sense of this is important to me to do, and then it takes the consciousness to say, yes, that's within my capacity to manifest. The people that went on the trip with us, we did a lot of sharing. The last 2 days we were in retreat, in a retreat center outside Dublin. And a lot of conversation. And so many people shared that when they signed up for the trip, they had no idea how they were going to manifest it. They just decided they wanted to set the intention and move forward in it. And they obviously all did because they were there. So it's not like I have to know what that I'm able to do it in the moment. I have to set the intention and then be willing to follow through on that. As I always say, the how is none of my business. I always say, I'm in marketing, God's in manufacturing. My job is to convince myself it's so, and once I convince myself it's so, the rest is taken care of. The how happens. So the true answer is, how do you travel so much? The true answer, I don't know. I just do. And it's not just a financial manifestation, it's also other things too, right? There's more to it than just that. It's not just about the money. Although that's an enabling energy. It's an enabling energy. And if you think, where do you use your money? You probably use it in areas that are important to you. Right? And you have people that have speedboats or have luxury cars or have, put a lot of money into some kind of a hobby situation. You go, how do they do that? Well, they're using the money that we use for travel. That's how they do it. Because that's more important to them, or that's where their focus is. So it's not about lack. It's always about focus, intention, and the recognition of what calls you forth. How are you the best you? Are you the best you pretty much at home, staying locally in that soul consciousness? Great. Design your life that way. If you're more in that spiritual, that sense of moving forward and being adventurous, great. Design your life that way. If it's some of both, great. You can have both, just not at the same time. So why I travel is for so many reasons, but mainly I travel because I understand it's in my nature to do that. Thank you. Namaste.